The Duke tore the school keys from his wife's waist and placed them in his mistress's palm. Lady Celeste will repair what your dishonesty has ruined. The iron ring struck Celeste Marlowe's glove with a dull metallic sound. Eleanor felt it as sharply as if Julian had struck her before the governors, teachers, and 82 girls gathered in the assembly hall. For 6 years, those keys had opened every classroom, cupboard, sickroom, and dormitory in Wexford School. Eleanor had carried them through winter epidemics and summer examinations. Now they hung from the fingers of a woman who had never taught a child to read. Celeste lowered her eyes with practiced modesty. I shall endeavour to restore the confidence her grace has squandered. A murmur moved through the governors seated beneath the Duke's portrait. At the front of the hall, the younger pupils gripped their slates. Several older girls stared openly at Eleanor. Julian stood beside Celeste, not his wife. He held a sheet of figures marked with red ink. £900 is missing from the charitable fund. These accounts were kept under the Duchess's authority. They were copied under my authority, Eleanor answered. The originals remain in the records room. Open them. Celeste's smile tightened. Eleanor saw it. So did Julian. For one suspended moment, he could have ordered the ledgers brought before the governors. Eleanor watched the choice form behind his eyes. He glanced at Celeste, then at Lord Harland, the wealthy mill owner, whose promised investment could rescue the Duke's failing eastern estates. His ambition won. There will be no further delay, Julian said. I have seen sufficient evidence. The words left Eleanor strangely still, not because she believed him, but because she understood that he had decided not to know. Miss Agatha Reed, the school's senior teacher, rose from her chair. Your Grace, I balanced those accounts with the Duchess last Thursday. No money was missing. Julian's expression hardened. You are dismissed. Gasps broke from the pupils. The porter stepped forward instinctively, but 2 estate footmen blocked him. Celeste produced a folded list from her reticule. Miss Reed is not the only member of staff whose loyalty has compromised her judgment, she said. Eleanor looked at the list and understood that the accusation was not merely intended to shame her. Celeste had prepared replacements before the governors had even heard the charge. You planned this, Eleanor said. Julian's jaw tightened. Do not make your disgrace worse. My disgrace? Eleanor crossed to the nearest table and lifted a slate covered with multiplication exercises. 6 years ago, half these girls could not write their own names. Last winter, their needlework contracts earned enough to heat 3 classrooms without drawing a penny from your estate. That does not answer the missing funds. The original ledger will. Celeste moved between Eleanor and the records room door. The documents must be secured against alteration. Eleanor almost laughed. Celeste was accusing her of changing papers while refusing to let anyone see them. Instead, she faced her husband. Seal the room, she said. Place 1 key with the magistrate and another with a governor, neither of us selected. Let the accounts be examined publicly. It was a simple, fair demand. Julian refused it. Lady Celeste now controls the school and its records. With that sentence, he gave his mistress authority over the evidence meant to prove his wife guilty. Eleanor saw Miss Reed press a hand to her mouth. Across the hall, 15-year-old Mary Finch quietly closed the attendance register and slid it beneath a stack of hymn books. Celeste noticed. Senior pupils will remain after the assembly, she announced. 20 have been selected for respectable apprenticeships in London. No one applauded. Eleanor turned toward the girls named on Celeste's list. Mary was among them. So was the girl with the injured leg bell, whose weak left leg made factory work dangerous, and Alice Turner, who had promised her dying mother she would become a teacher. None of them applied for apprenticeships, Eleanor said. Their parents have consented. I correspond with their parents. You no longer correspond with anyone connected to this institution, Julian replied. You will leave the school immediately. The youngest pupils began to cry. Eleanor wanted to gather them close, but Celeste was waiting for that, waiting for one emotional act that could be called hysteria or defiance. So Eleanor knelt before little one of the youngest pupils' Pike and returned the child's fallen slate pencil. Keep your sums neat, she whispered, and stay beside Miss Reed until you are told otherwise. Then she rose, with her dignity intact. As the footman escorted her through the dormitory corridor, Eleanor counted the 20 selected beds. Each blanket had already been folded back. Travelling bundles rested at their feet, packed before the announcement had been made. Celeste had not merely planned to take the school, she had planned to remove those girls. A copper penny gleamed on Mary Finch's pillow. Eleanor slowed just long enough to close her fingers around it. One edge bore a tiny crescent-shaped cut. She had seen that mark before on wage tokens issued by Blackmere Textile Works, a riverside factory officially closed after 12 workers died in a fire. At the outer gate, Julian waited while a servant brought Eleanor's carriage. "You will remain at the Dower House until I decide what must be done," he said. "You were offered the teeth girl with the injured leg today. I was offered another performance." "No, Julian, you were offered a choice." His gaze flickered toward the school windows. For an instant, Eleanor saw unease beneath his anger. Then Celeste appeared in the doorway, wearing Eleanor's silver school badge, and he turned away. The gates closed between husband and wife. Inside the carriage, Eleanor opened her hand and studied the mutilated penny. The school funds had not been altered merely to steal her position. The accusation gave Celeste control of the records, the staff, and 20 girls whose journeys had been arranged before anyone knew they were leaving. Eleanor struck the carriage roof. "Do not take me to the Dower House," she told the driver. "Follow the London road." Beyond the school wall, carriage wheels were already moving, and Eleanor knew the public humiliation had been designed to keep everyone looking at her while the real crime left through another gate. The driver hesitated only a second before pulling the reins sharply to the left. The carriage swung away from the road to the Dower House and raced toward the northern boundary of the estate. Eleanor gripped the window frame as the wheels struck deep ruts. Ahead, 2 black travelling carriages moved between the hedgerows. "Keep your distance," she called. "If they stop, pass them." The driver Hale, had served Eleanor since the school's first winter. His youngest sister had been one of its earliest pupils. "If His Grace dismisses me for this," he said, "I shall consider it the first honest dismissal issued today." Despite everything, Eleanor almost smiled. The road divided near an abandoned toll house. The 2 black carriages turned west, not east, toward London. Eleanor unfolded the estate map kept beneath her seat. Her father, a merchant who had built his fortune transporting wool, had taught her to read roads as carefully as account books. A declared destination meant little. Weight, distance, tolls, and feeding stops revealed where a cargo was truly going. The western road led to the river and to Blackmere Textile Works. "Drive past them," she ordered. The driver urged the horses forward. As they drew level with the first carriage, Eleanor leaned toward the window. Its curtains were closed. She heard no girls talking inside. The rear axle rode unusually high, as if the carriage carried very little weight. The second vehicle was the same, empty. Someone had sent 2 visible carriages along the road to create a trail, while the girls were being moved another way. Eleanor's stomach tightened. "Turn back to the school." The driver looked over his shoulder. "The gates will be guarded, not the laundry entrance." They returned by a narrow lane, hidden behind a row of cottages. Eleanor had designed that route years earlier, so coal and food deliveries would not cross the children's exercise yard. As the school roof appeared beyond the trees, a woman stepped from behind a stone wall. Miss Reed raised both hands. The driver stopped the carriage. "They are watching the main road," the teacher said as she climbed inside. Her bonnet was crushed, and one sleeve had been torn where a footman had forced her through the gate. Celeste ordered every senior pupil into the dining hall. "No one is permitted to speak with them." "Are all 20 still there?" "They were when I left, but Harland's steward arrived with a covered wagon." Lord Harland again. Julian believed the mill owner would save Wexford's eastern farms by investing in new looms and worker housing. Eleanor had warned that Harland's proposed contract placed every risk upon the estate while guaranteeing his profits. Julian had called her distrust unbecoming. Now Harland's wage token had appeared on a pupil's pillow. Eleanor showed Miss Reed the copper penny. The teacher's face lost its colour. "Mary found 3 of these last week inside the arithmetic cupboard. She thought they were foreign coins." Did she tell anyone else?" she told Celeste. The answer struck harder than Eleanor expected. Mary Finch had unknowingly revealed that the school possessed evidence connecting someone to a condemned factory. Within days, Celeste had arranged to take control of the building and remove Mary with 19 other girls. "We must reach the records room," Eleanor said. Miss Reed shook her head. Celeste changed the locks. Only on the corridor door. Years earlier, when scarlet fever had swept through a neighbouring parish, Eleanor had created an outside entrance so supplies could be passed into the school without exposing the children. Julian had signed the expense but never asked why the door was needed. The carriage stopped behind the laundry yard. Eleanor and Miss Reed crossed through steam, rising from copper wash tubs, while the driver remained with the horses. An elderly laundress silently pointed toward the pantry. Loyalty moved through the school in quiet gestures. Eleanor had kept the institution alive, not with grand speeches, but by knowing whose mother needed medicine, whose wages supported 5 children, and which supplier would extend credit when Julian forgot to release the quarterly allowance. That was why she could not simply retreat to the dower house. 82 girls depended on meals, lodging, and wages Eleanor had negotiated personally. If Celeste destroyed the school's reputation, no respectable household would employ its graduates. The accusation would follow every pupil, long after Eleanor cleared her own name. At the hidden door, Eleanor removed a narrow pin from her hair and pressed it into the old lock. Her father had taught her that merchants who transported valuable documents should never trust a single entrance. The latch yielded. Inside, the records room smelled of paper and sealing wax. Shelves covered 3 walls, but the central table had been stripped bare. "The original accounts," Miss Reed whispered. "They are gone." Eleanor moved to the donation cabinet. Its brass seal remained unbroken. She opened it. The cash box contained £37, exactly the amount recorded when she had closed it the previous evening. Receipts were arranged by month. Supplier invoices bore the marks she used to confirm payment. Nothing was missing. Celeste's accusation depended upon a copied ledger, while every document that could disprove it had been left intact or so neatly arranged that no thief would bother searching further. Eleanor examined the wax on the cabinet. The ducal crest appeared correct, but the wax was soft. This seal was replaced this morning. Miss Reed stared at the unbroken impression. "Then how can we prove it?" Eleanor lifted the first stack of receipts. Beneath it lay 20 apprenticeship contracts bearing parents' signatures. The same hand had written every name. At the bottom of each contract, beside the promised London address, appeared a shipping fee charged to the school. Eleanor added the figures without reaching for a pencil. £900. The exact sum Julian had accused her of stealing had not vanished from the school at all. It had been entered as the price of transporting 20 girls who had never agreed to leave. Miss Reed reached for the contracts, but Eleanor caught her wrist. "Do not move them yet." A smear of pale blue powder marked the lower corner of the top page. The same powder dusted the shelf where the documents had rested. Eleanor bent closer. "Laundry blue. Why would that be here?" "Because these papers were hidden among the linen before being placed in this cabinet." She examined the forged signatures. Every mother's name had been written with confident, practiced strokes, but several fathers had made identical crosses. Even the ink leaned toward the same edge of each mark. One writer, 20 false consents. Eleanor slipped the copper penny beneath the contracts and pressed lightly. The crescent cut aligned precisely with a curved stain in the soft wax seal. Someone had used a marked blackmail token to lift the original wax while it was still warm. The penny was no longer merely a clue connecting the school to the closed factory. It had been part of the forgery. Footsteps sounded in the corridor. Miss Reed extinguished the lamp. Voices stopped outside the locked door. "You told me she had gone to the dower house," Celeste said. Julian answered more quietly. Her carriage was seen returning by the northern lane. Eleanor folded one contract and placed it inside her glove. Removing all 20 would reveal that someone had discovered them. One document was enough to establish the pattern if she could secure an authentic parent's testimony. The key turned. Eleanor and Miss Reed slipped through the outside entrance just as the corridor door opened. They crossed the laundry yard and entered the empty kitchen. From there, Eleanor heard Celeste give a sharp cry. "The contracts have been disturbed." Julian's reply came after a pause. "How can you know?" "Because I arranged them myself." Silence followed. Eleanor looked at Miss Reed. For the first time that day, Julian had heard a contradiction without his wife pointing it out. Celeste had claimed the papers belonged to Eleanor's records, yet she had just admitted placing them in the cabinet. Then Celeste recovered. "I mean that I discovered them and put them in order after the Duchess abandoned the room." Julian accepted the explanation, because rejecting it would mean admitting how recklessly he had acted before the governors. "You should leave," Miss Reed whispered. "Not without the girls." They moved through the servants' passage toward the dining hall. Through a narrow window, Eleanor saw the covered wagon waiting in the rear courtyard. Lord Harland's steward stood beside it, checking his watch. The vehicle displayed no crest, but its wheels carried reddish clay, found only along the Blackmere riverbank. Inside the dining hall, the 20 selected pupils sat at one long table. 2 unfamiliar matrons guarded the doors. Travelling cloaks had been piled beside them. Mary Finch saw Eleanor through the serving hatch. She did not call out. Instead, she lifted her hand and tapped the tabletop 3 times, paused, then tapped twice. It was a code Eleanor had taught the girls during fire drills. 3 for danger, 2 for a blocked exit. Eleanor pointed toward the pantry door. Mary gave the smallest shake of her head. Locked. Eleanor scanned the room. 2 high windows opened above the courtyard, too narrow for escape. The fireplace connected to the kitchen chimney, but its grate had been newly barred. Celeste had prepared for resistance. A younger pupil entered, carrying a tray of milk. Eleanor recognized one of the youngest pupils, Pike, the child whose pencil she had returned in the assembly hall. One of the matrons turned to complain about the cups. One of the youngest pupils dropped a folded scrap of paper beneath Mary's chair. Eleanor's heart tightened with pride. The school had taught its pupils more than sums and handwriting. It had taught them to observe, think, and help one another. Mary read the note beneath the table. Then she rose abruptly. "I am going to be sick." As the nearest matron rushed forward, 4 girls overturned the milk tray. Chairs scraped. One of the youngest pupils unbolted the pantry door. Eleanor pulled it open from the other side. "Walk," she ordered. "Do not run." The girls moved through the pantry in pairs, exactly as they had practiced during evacuation drills. Miss Reed led them into the laundry passage, while Eleanor remained until the last child crossed. Mary stopped beside her. "They made us put pennies on our beds," she whispered. "Lady Celeste said it would prove we accepted wages." "Who gave her the pennies?" "Mr. Harland's steward," but the girl with the injured leg saw something else. The final girl, the girl with the injured leg bell, limped forward without her crutch. "He took our school badges," the girl with the injured leg said. "All 20. A door slammed behind them. Celeste had discovered the escape. Eleanor guided the girls into the laundry yard, where the driver waited with the carriage and 6 school servants had gathered. There was not enough room for everyone. "Take the youngest and those who cannot walk quickly," Eleanor said. "Miss Reed, lead the others through the orchard to St. Anne's Chapel. The rector will shelter you." The servants formed a protective line as the pupils departed. Julian entered the yard with Celeste and Lord Harland's steward behind him. "Stop them," Celeste demanded. No one moved. Julian looked from the empty wagon to the girls disappearing into the orchard. Then his gaze settled upon the girl with the injured leg, struggling without her crutch. "Why was that child being sent to factory work?" he asked. "She was not," Celeste replied immediately. "The apprenticeships were educational placements." "At Blackmere?" For one heartbeat, Eleanor thought the penny had awakened his reason. Celeste stepped close to him. "Eleanor has frightened the girls with another of her inventions. If they fail to depart today, Harland will withdraw his investment, and your tenants will blame you when the Eastern estate collapses." Julian's expression closed again. He looked at Eleanor. "You will return the pupils." No, it was the first time she had refused him without qualification. "They remain under my protection as their legal sponsor until their parents are consulted." "You have no authority here." "Then summon the parents and prove it." Julian did not order the servants to seize the girls, but neither did he challenge Celeste or detain Harland's steward. That cowardly middle ground gave Eleanor the minutes she needed. The last pupil vanished into the orchard. Celeste watched her plan retreat beneath the trees. Her polished expression fell away, revealing something colder than anger. She no longer saw Eleanor as a discarded wife. She saw her as the only person standing between 20 witnesses and whatever waited at Blackmere. Celeste turned to the steward. "Send riders to St. Anne's," she said, "before the Duchess reaches the rector." The riders reached the orchard before Eleanor did. Harland's men entered from the eastern path, driving their horses between the rows of apple trees to cut off the pupils. Miss Reed turned the girls toward the stone wall surrounding St. Anne's churchyard, but the girl with the injured leg could not keep pace. Eleanor ran to her. Behind them, a rider shouted, By order of the Duke of Wexford, those pupils are to return immediately. The Duke gave no such order. Eleanor called back. Not yet. The men were relying on his name because they expected Julian to approve whatever had already been done. Eleanor placed the girl with the injured leg's arm across her shoulders. The girl's face tightened with pain, but she did not complain. Mary and two older pupils doubled back to help. "Leave me," the girl with the injured leg gasped. "No one is being left," Eleanor said. A church bell rang once. The side gate opened, and Reverend Samuel Price appeared with 4 farm labourers carrying spades and pruning hooks. The rector was a broad, grey-haired man who had taught Eleanor Latin during the first year of her marriage, when Julian still admired her curiosity rather than resenting her competence. "These children are under church protection until their parents arrive," he said. Harlan's lead rider reined in. "This is a state business. It became parish business when frightened miners entered my churchyard. The men could force their way through, but not without attacking a clergyman and several witnesses. Their courage diminished beneath the bell tower. They withdrew to the road." Inside the chapel, Eleanor counted every girl twice. The girl with the injured leg was placed on a pew while the rector examined her swollen ankle. Miss Reed secured the doors. Mary handed Eleanor the folded note. One of the youngest pupils had slipped beneath the dining table. The message contained only 7 words. "Badges put in chest. Wagon under flour sacks." "What chest?" Eleanor asked. Mary swallowed. "The one Lady Celeste brought into the office. She made each of us surrender our silver badge. Then Mr. Harlan's steward locked them inside. 20 badges engraved with 20 names could be presented as proof that the girls had arrived willingly at Blackmere. Eleanor understood the scheme more clearly now. The forged contracts created legal-looking consent. The marked pennies suggested wages had been accepted. The badges would connect each pupil to the factory. If the girls disappeared, Celeste could claim they had departed voluntarily. If they were found at Blackmere, Eleanor would be blamed for sending them. The accusation of theft was not merely a reason to remove her. It was meant to make every forged document appear consistent with her supposed corruption. "Did anyone see who wrote the contracts?" Eleanor asked. A thin girl named Mary raised her hand. "Mr. Harlan's clerk came 3 nights ago," she said. "Lady Celeste told me to carry tea to the school office. He was practicing names from the admission book. Would you recognize him?" Yes. That single answer gave Eleanor something the forged papers could not erase: a living witness. Hooves sounded outside again. This time, Julian entered the chapel with 2 estate constables. Celeste followed in a carriage, accompanied by 3 school governors. She had chosen her audience carefully. Julian's gaze found Eleanor beside the altar. "You defied my order, removed pupils from the school, and obstructed lawful apprenticeships. I prevented 20 girls from being taken in an unmarked wagon." Celeste turned toward the governors. "You see how she inflames every ordinary arrangement. The girls were never in danger. Then why were riders sent to seize them? To protect them from Eleanor's panic." Celeste crossed to the girl with the injured leg's pew and softened her voice. "This poor child has been dragged across an orchard with an injured ankle." The girl with the injured leg stared at her in disbelief. Eleanor had carried the girl to safety, yet Celeste transformed that rescue into another accusation. One governor glanced disapprovingly at Eleanor. The rector stepped between them. "I witnessed the riders pursuing the children," he said. "I also witnessed the Duchess carrying this pupil when those men would not halt." The governor lowered his eyes. Julian looked at the girl with the injured leg's bare hands. "Where is your crutch?" "Lady Celeste's matron took it," the girl with the injured leg replied. "She said it would not fit in the wagon." Celeste's face remained composed, but her fingers tightened around her reticule. Children misunderstand practical instructions. 20 children? Eleanor asked. Did all of them also misunderstand why their badges were locked in a chest? "Man," the governors began murmuring. Julian raised a hand for silence. "What chest?" "The one sent toward Blackmere beneath flour sacks." Celeste laughed softly. "There is no such chest." "Then allow the wagon to be searched. It has already departed to collect school provisions." Eleanor removed the apprenticeship contract from her glove and gave it to Julian. "Read the destination." His eyes moved across the page. "London. Now read the transportation charge." £900. The precise sum you accuse me of stealing. It was entered after the donation cabinet had been opened and resealed with a blackmare wage token. Tao. She placed the marked penny in his palm. The three governors leaned closer. Julian studied the crescent cut. Eleanor saw doubt break through his certainty. Celeste moved quickly. That coin came from Eleanor, she said. She was found inside the locked records room after being forbidden to enter. She could have planted every paper she now presents. She could not have planted what I saw, Mary said. The girl stepped from behind Miss Reed. Celeste turned. Mary's courage wavered beneath the woman's stare, but Eleanor placed one steadying hand on her shoulder. Tell His Grace exactly what you witnessed. Mary described the clerk, the admission book, and the names he had copied. She even remembered the ring he wore, a black stone carved with a heron. One of the governors stiffened. Harlan's clerk wears such a ring. The chapel fell silent. Julian now possessed a forged contract, a marked token, the statement of a clergyman, and a child who could identify the man who had copied the signatures. Eleanor watched him face the opportunity he had rejected in the assembly hall. Send a constable to intercept the wagon, she said. Open the chest in front of these governors. If it does not contain the girls' badges, I will go quietly to the dower house. And if it does? The rector asked. Eleanor kept her eyes on Julian. Then my husband must decide whether he still wishes to protect the people who used his authority to steal 20 children. Julian closed his fingers around the marked penny. For several seconds, no one in the chapel moved. Then, one of Harlan's riders entered through the side door and handed Celeste a message. She read it quickly before concealing it in her reticule. Eleanor noticed the broken black seal. A heron had been stamped into the wax. Show my husband that letter, she said. Celeste's head lifted. It concerns Lord Harlan's private affairs. It arrived from the man whose clerk forged these contracts. Julian held out his hand. Celeste did not immediately obey. The hesitation should have ended every doubt. Instead, she stepped closer and spoke softly enough to create the appearance of intimacy while ensuring the governors still heard. Harlan has learned of the Duchess's interference. Unless these apprenticeships proceed tonight, he will withdraw his investment and demand immediate payment of the loans secured against the Eastern farms. Julian read the letter. His face changed. Eleanor knew what those farms meant to him. His father had lost 3 properties through reckless speculation, leaving Julian determined never to appear weak before creditors. Harlan had discovered that fear and shaped every bargain around it. How much is due? Eleanor asked. Julian folded the paper. That is not your concern. It became my concern when you used my school to secure the debt. One of the governors turned sharply toward him. Your Grace, was the school pledged as part of Harlan's agreement? Only its future textile revenue. It is a charitable institution, the rector said, not a source of labor for a private mill. Celeste intervened. The pupils would receive training, wages, and respectable employment. At a factory, closed by the county magistrates, Eleanor asked. Julian looked toward the windows. Outside, Harlan's riders waited beside the road. He had evidence enough to stop them, but doing so would mean losing the investment, admitting that Eleanor had warned him correctly, and facing the governors as a man who had handed vulnerable children to a creditor. Pride made the decision before reason could reach him. The wagon will not be searched, he said. Miss Reed stared at him. Why? Because I will not permit my wife to turn unfounded suspicions into a public scandal. The scandal is already here, Eleanor replied. You are simply choosing which person must pay for it. Julian summoned the chief constable and requested paper from the rector's desk. Eleanor watched him write. What are you doing? Ending this disorder. He signed an order, suspending Eleanor's authority as sponsor of the pupils. Until the financial inquiry concluded, guardianship of all boarders supported by the Wexford Charitable Fund would pass to the school's acting directress, Lady Celeste Marlowe. The rector read the order and lowered it slowly. You are placing these girls under the authority of the woman accused by a witness. I am placing them under the school's lawful authority. No, Eleanor said. You are giving Celeste the power she needs to silence that witness. Julian handed the document to the constable. Return the pupils to the school. Several girls began crying. Mary drew Mary behind her. The girl with the injured leg tried to stand without her crutch and nearly fell. The constable did not move. "Your Grace," he said, "perhaps the wagon should be examined first." Julian's voice turned cold. "Are you refusing a direct order?" The man looked at his wife, who worked in the Duke's kitchens, and then toward the labourers who depended on estate cottages. His shoulders sank. "No, Your Grace." Fear accomplished what Harlan's riders could not. The constables separated the girls from Miss Reed and the rector. Eleanor stepped in front of Mary. "This child witnessed a forgery. She will be questioned at the school," Julian said. "By Celeste? By the governors. Governors whom Celeste selected for today's performance." Julian's expression hardened. "Stand aside." Eleanor did not. A constable approached, shame visible on his face. "Please, Your Grace." She understood that resisting physically would allow Celeste to portray her as dangerous and might frighten the younger pupils further. Eleanor moved only after the rector promised to accompany the girls. Celeste objected immediately. Julian overruled her, perhaps to convince himself that he had preserved some measure of fairness. "The rector may attend." It was a small concession after an unforgivable choice. The girls were escorted back through the orchard. Eleanor remained beneath the chapel arch, barred by Julian's written order from following them. As Mary passed, she pressed something into Eleanor's hand. It was a loose black button carved with a tiny heron. "The clerk dropped it," Mary whispered. "I kept it." Eleanor closed her fingers around the object. The button could place Harlan's clerk inside the school office, but Mary was returning to Celeste's control, and Celeste now knew the child had spoken. Julian approached when the chapel had nearly emptied. "This will be resolved by morning," he said. "By morning they may be gone. They are safer inside my school than on the road with you." "Your school?" The question stopped him. Eleanor looked toward the distant roof she had fought 6 years to raise. "When our marriage began, I believed I could protect what mattered by making myself useful to you. I balanced your accounts. I negotiated your contracts. I built a school that repaired your family's reputation." Julian's face tightened, but she did not let him interrupt. "Today, you used every contribution I made as evidence that you had the right to replace me. I will not spend another hour trying to save our marriage from a choice you made willingly." For the first time, fear not anger entered his eyes. Eleanor stepped past him. Her purpose had changed. She was no longer trying to persuade her husband to recognize her innocence. She would protect the girls, prove the fraud, and secure the school beyond his control, even if doing so destroyed what remained of their marriage. At the gate, the driver waited with the carriage. Miss Reed had escaped the constables by slipping through the vestry and now stood beside him. "We need the girls' parents," Eleanor said. "Everyone we can reach." Miss Reed climbed inside. "And Mary?" "We return for her tonight." As the driver turned the horses toward the workers' village, Eleanor opened her hand. The heron button still carried a strand of pale blue thread. "Laundry, blue." The clerk had hidden the contracts among the school linens. Then a distant bell began ringing from the direction of Wexford School. Not the measured call for supper. 3 strokes. A pause. 2 strokes. Danger. Blocked exit. The signal repeated once and stopped in the middle of the final strike. The driver turned the carriage before Eleanor finished speaking. The horses galloped toward the school as the broken warning signal faded across the estate. Miss Reed clung to the seat while Eleanor watched the bell tower above the trees. No figure remained beside the bell. At the front gates, 2 constables stood beneath newly lit lanterns. The school windows were dark. "Where are the pupils?" Eleanor demanded. "Inside, Your Grace." "Then why did they signal danger?" The older constable avoided her eyes. Lady Celeste ordered an early supper. The rector was asked to wait in the governor's room. Asked or locked inside it? Neither man answered. Eleanor stepped toward the gate. The constables crossed their staffs. She could not enter without forcing men who had once trusted her to choose between conscience and their family's security. So she looked beyond them instead. No lamplight shone from the dormitories. No smoke rose from the kitchen chimney. 82 girls could not eat supper in silence without a single fire burning. "The school is empty," she said. A crash sounded from the western wing. The rector shattered a ground-floor window with a chair and climbed through it. "They have taken them," he shouted. The constables turned too late. Eleanor pushed through the gate. Inside the dining hall, bowls of untouched soup remained on the tables. The 20 senior girls were gone. The younger pupils had been locked inside 2 classrooms with the school cook. Celeste had used Julian's order to separate the witnesses from everyone who might protect them. "How did they leave?" Eleanor asked. "The laundry carts," the cook replied. Lady Celeste said there was an outbreak of fever and ordered the children wrapped in linen so no one would see them. The pale blue powder on the forged contracts, the thread on the clerk's button. The laundry was not merely where the papers had been hidden. It was the route through which the entire operation moved. Miss Reed ran toward the service yard. 2 carts had left deep tracks in the wet ground. Unlike the empty carriages, they travelled south toward the river. Blackmere. Julian rode through the gate moments later, with Celeste beside him. When he saw the empty hall, his face drained of colour. "Where are the girls?" Celeste did not answer immediately. That delay was enough. Julian seized her arm. "Where are they?" She pulled free. Harland moved them for their own safety, after Eleanor encouraged the others to riot. "You told me they would remain here." "I told you they would remain under school authority. Your signed order permitted me to choose a suitable residence." Julian stared at her as if he were seeing the precise shape of what he had done. "You used my name to remove them." "No," Eleanor said. "She used the authority you deliberately gave her." The distinction struck him. A messenger entered, carrying another letter sealed with Harland's heron. Julian broke it open. His expression hardened with each line. "What does it say?" Eleanor asked. Julian lowered the paper. "Harland has withdrawn the investment. He claims today's disruption breached our agreement." "And the Eastern Farms?" "He has demanded repayment by sunrise." Celeste had never intended to save the estate. Harland had used Julian's fear to obtain control of the school, create a public scandal, and trigger a default that could place the Eastern Farms in his hands. Julian had sacrificed Eleanor to preserve his land, and his sacrifice had given Harland the weapon to seize it. "I will send every estate rider to Blackmere," he said. "No." Julian turned toward her. "Harland expects your men," Eleanor continued. "The main road will be watched. If armed riders arrive, he can claim you are attacking a creditor's property. He may move the girls before anyone reaches the factory." "Then what do you propose?" Eleanor unfolded her father's map across a dining table. Blackmere stood on the southern bank, beside a canal, once used to transport wool. The road crossed 2 toll bridges, but an old towpath approached the factory from the north. Her finger stopped at a narrow bend. "The laundry carts are heavy. They cannot cross Marsh Bridge because the central boards were removed last spring. They must turn east at Miller's Ford." The driver nodded. "We can reach the ford first, if we take the quarry road." Julian reached for his coat. "I am coming." "You are going to the magistrate. My wife and 20 girls have been taken under my authority, and that is precisely what you will tell him." Eleanor met his gaze without softness. "If you want to help them, put in writing that Celeste deceived you, that the contracts are disputed, and that you authorized the transfer without verifying the evidence. Tell the costly the girl with the injured leg before Harland can use your rank to protect himself." Julian understood. The statement could destroy his standing as a magistrate, expose his financial desperation, and prove that his own negligence enabled the abduction. It would not earn Eleanor's forgiveness. It was simply the first honest action still available to him. He mounted his horse and turned toward the county town. Eleanor, the driver, Miss Reed, and the rector took the quarry road in the carriage. 6 parents joined them in a farm wagon after hearing the chapel bell. They reached Miller's Ford shortly before midnight. The first laundry cart lay overturned beside the river. No children were inside. A strip of school uniform had been tied to the broken wheel, pointing toward the abandoned canal path. Mary had left a trail. Eleanor followed it on foot. Every 50 yards, another piece of blue cloth had been knotted around a branch. The girls were not waiting helplessly to be saved. They were marking their route for the woman they trusted to understand. The trail ended at Blackmere Textile Works. Though the factory had supposedly been closed for 2 years, candlelight glowed behind its boarded windows. Machinery thundered inside. Through a crack in the wall, Eleanor saw dozens of exhausted children working beside spinning frames. Harland had continued operating illegally after the fatal fire, using false apprenticeships to replace labourers who had fled. The 20 schoolgirls stood under guard near the loading doors. A river barge waited beyond them. "They intend to move everyone before the magistrate arrives," Miss Reed whispered. Eleanor studied the canal gates. Years earlier, Her father's boats had used that same waterway. If the upper sluice was opened, the sudden drop in water would ground the barge in mud. But children still occupied the factory. Harlan's men might burn the building to destroy evidence before they could escape. Eleanor looked at the parents beside her. "We will not storm the doors," she said. "We will take away the river." The rector and the driver crept toward the sluice, while Eleanor circled to the loading yard. She found a loose floor grate and crawled beneath the weaving room. Above her, Mary tapped 3 times against a pipe. Eleanor answered twice. The girls began moving. One distracted the guard with a fainting spell. 2 others slipped behind the loom frames and released the younger workers from a locked enclosure. Mary stole the ring of keys from Harlan's clerk. Then the canal water began to fall. Men shouted outside as the barge settled into the mud. Eleanor pushed open the floor grate. "This way." Children poured beneath the machinery and into the drainage passage. Smoke followed them. Harlan's clerk had overturned an oil lamp near the paper store. Flames climbed the wall. Eleanor remained until the final child crossed. Mary carried the locked wooden chest between them. The girl with the injured leg followed with a discarded broom handle, serving as a crutch. They emerged beside the canal as the factory windows burst behind them. Mary stumbled beside the canal, still clutching the locked chest. Eleanor took it from her and wrapped her own scorched shawl around the girl's shoulders. "I knew you would understand the pieces of blue cloth," Mary whispered. Eleanor brushed soot from her cheek. "You should never have needed to be that brave. But you taught us not to wait helplessly." Eleanor's composure almost broke. She pulled Mary close, feeling the child tremble against her. "I taught you to think," she said. "I never meant for you to face monsters alone." Mary held her tighter. "We weren't alone. We knew you were coming." By the time the group reached Wexford School, dawn was breaking across the fields. Villagers, parents, servants, and governors crowded before the gates. The 20 missing girls walked toward them in their scorched blue uniforms. Behind them came 31 children, rescued from Blackmere. Mary placed the locked chest at Celeste's feet. Then Mary pointed toward the school's new directress. "She knew we were being taken to the factory," the girl said. "And we can prove it." Celeste looked at the 20 scorched girls, then at the locked chest beside her shoes. "You have brought criminals into a charitable school," she said. "That chest was stolen from Lord Harlan's property." Mary's face flushed. Eleanor placed herself between the girl and Celeste. "No child will answer another question until her parent or the magistrate is present. You no longer control this institution. Neither do you." The parents moved forward as one. Celeste still possessed Julian's written authority, but authority meant little when every doorway was blocked by mothers and fathers demanding their children. The county magistrate arrived with Julian less than an hour later. Julian had kept Eleanor's condition. His written statement admitted that he had transferred control of the school, despite unresolved objections, refused to search Harlan's wagon, and authorized Celeste to move the pupils without parental verification. The confession temporarily cost him his judicial commission. Until the county inquiry ended, he could issue no warrants, preside over no hearings, or use his position to protect the Wexford name. He handed the statement to the magistrate without asking Eleanor to acknowledge the sacrifice. That restraint was new. It did not repair anything. The magistrate sealed the school and ordered Celeste to remain on the estate. Harlan's clerk had vanished during the Blackmere fire, while Lord Harlan claimed illness and refused to leave his house. The rescued children were taken to St. Anne's Parish Hall, which became Eleanor's base of action. Mattresses covered the floor. Villagers brought bread, blankets, and medicine. Miss Reed organised lessons for children who woke screaming whenever machinery rattled outside. Eleanor used the quarterly pin money, protected by her marriage settlement, to pay for food and temporary lodging. It was not enough to rebuild the school, but it was money Julian could not withdraw. For the first time since their marriage, her work stood on resources beyond his discretion. The locked chest was carried to the parish hall under guard. Before the magistrate, the rector, 3 parents, and the rescued pupils, Eleanor broke the lock. Inside lay 20 silver school badges. Beneath them were wage lists from Blackmere Textile Works. Each pupil's name had been entered beside 12 weeks of payments, though none had ever worked there. Mary pointed to one column. "That is the handwriting of the clerk I saw." The magistrate examined the ink. "It proves false entries were prepared. It does not prove who ordered them." Mary lifted a packet of letters from the bottom of the chest. Each bore Celeste's initials. The first requested pupils between 13 and 17 years old. The second promised that Eleanor would be publicly removed before the transfers occurred. The third instructed Harlan to charge the £900 transportation fee against the school account. Celeste had signed nothing more than the letter C, powerful evidence but still vulnerable to claims of forgery. Eleanor examined the letters. The paper mattered less than the violet wax, sealing every fold, the same wax Celeste used for her private correspondence. "Did anyone carry these to Harland House?" Eleanor asked. The dismissed footman stepped forward. "I did." Lady Celeste placed the packet in my hand herself. It was not yet enough to convict her, but it gave Eleanor a witness Celeste had forgotten to silence. Celeste's letters established her plan. Daniel established delivery. Mary identified Harlan's clerk. The badges and false wage lists showed the intended result. Yet Eleanor still needed to prove how Celeste accessed the school funds and why Harlan wanted these particular girls rather than any other children. That answer emerged from the rescued workers. A 12-year-old boy, named a rescued Blackmere boy, recognized Mary Finch. "Her brother worked beside me," he said. "He died in the fire." Mary went still. Official reports named 12 adult workers killed at Blackmere. No children appeared on the list. But several school pupils were sisters of children who had disappeared while working for Harland. Their admission records contained statements from grieving families, statements that could expose the false death register and prove Harland had concealed illegal child labor. The 20 girls had not been selected merely as workers. They were connected to the 20 most dangerous families. Celeste had gained access to those family histories when Julian gave her the school. By removing Eleanor, she could seize the records, discredit the institution, and force the sisters into Blackmere's hidden system. Their presence on false wage lists would make their testimony appear motivated by money. Harland was not hiding one illegal factory. He was erasing everyone capable of proving how long it had operated. That evening, Julian entered the parish hall alone. His coat was dusty from riding between creditors and tenants. He stopped beside a table covered with school accounts. Eleanor had recorded every loaf, blanket, medicine bottle, and child by name. "I did not know you paid for winter coal from your pin money," he said. "You never asked how the classrooms remained open after you delayed the allowance. I believe the school weakened the estate. It repaired the reputation your father destroyed." He looked toward the children, sleeping beneath donated quilts. "And I gave it to Celeste because Harlan made me believe your independence was defiance." "No." He recognized that you already believed it. Julian accepted the distinction. "What do you need from me?" "Copies of every agreement you signed with Harland. No pages removed. No debts concealed." "And after that?" "There is no after that between us today." Pain moved across his face, but he nodded. "My solicitor will deliver everything before midnight." "Not your solicitor. You will deliver it to the magistrate, who will inventory it in front of witnesses. Cooperation would occur only under Eleanor's terms." Julian bowed his head. "Very well." Near midnight, the magistrate placed Celeste's letters, Daniel's messenger book, and the Blackmere wage lists inside a locked dispatch case. He intended to carry them to the county courthouse at first light. Eleanor watched him seal the case with plain red wax. The rector and 2 parents signed across the paper strip securing the lock. No single person could open it without leaving evidence. For the first time, the Tether girl with the injured leg seemed protected. Then a horse screamed outside. The parish hall lamps went dark. A window shattered and smoke filled the room. While Eleanor and Miss Reed carried children through the rear doors, a masked man struck the magistrate and seized the dispatch case. The driver pursued him into the churchyard. A pistol fired. When Eleanor reached the gate, the driver lay wounded beside the road. The rider had vanished with every document they had secured, and Mary, the only child who could identify Harlan's clerk, was missing. The driver was alive. The pistol ball had passed through the flesh above his shoulder without striking bone. Miss Reed bound the wound, while Eleanor searched the churchyard with the magistrate's men. They found Mary's shoe beside the northern gate. A strip of pale blue thread had been tied through its buckle. Eleanor held it beneath the lantern. Mary had remembered the trail Mary left near Blackmere. "She is marking the route," Eleanor said. The thread appeared again on a thorn bush, then on the latch of the abandoned toll house. Inside, Mary crouched behind a broken desk with the dismissed footman. He had seen the masked rider seize her and followed on foot. When the attacker stopped to unlock the toll house, Daniel struck him with a stone. Mary escaped, but the rider carried the dispatch case onward. "Did you see his face?" the magistrate asked. Mary shook her head. Daniel had seen only a heron-shaped clasp on the man's cloak. Harlan's servant or someone dressed to appear as one. At sunrise, smoke rose from a field beyond the eastern farms. The magistrate's dispatch case lay open inside a burning hay cart. Celeste's letters, the messenger book, and the wage lists had been reduced to black fragments. The signed seals across the case proved the evidence had been stolen after entering official custody, but they could not restore the words on the pages. By noon, Lord Harland launched his counterattack. He arrived at Wexford School with a solicitor, 6 creditors, and printed statements claiming that Eleanor had incited pupils to rob Blackmere and burn the factory. Harland denied employing children there. He insisted the rescued workers had been brought from another property and coached to accuse him. Celeste stood beside him wearing Eleanor's silver school badge. Before the assembled governors, she produced a copy of Eleanor's supposed instructions authorizing the 20 apprenticeships. At the bottom appeared Eleanor's signature. The forgery was excellent. Harland's solicitor addressed the crowd. The Duchess removed charitable funds, arranged unauthorized placements, and destroyed the factory after those arrangements were discovered. Her allegations are an attempt to conceal her own misconduct. Without the stolen letters and wage lists, the story sounded possible. Several creditors accepted it immediately because Harland's version protected their loans. 2 governors, who had supported Eleanor the previous day, now avoided her gaze. Then Harland presented Julian with a demand: publicly confirm Eleanor's guilt, and the Eastern farms would be spared. Refuse, and the loans would be called before sunset. The tenants gathered outside the gates understood what that meant. Hundreds of families could lose their homes. Julian stood upon the school steps between his wife and his creditor. It was another moment in which he could preserve his position by sacrificing Eleanor. This time, he faced the crowd. "My wife did not arrange those apprenticeships." Harland's solicitor lifted the forged order. "Do you deny her signature?" "I deny the story built around it." Julian removed the ducal chain from his coat, the emblem he wore when acting as county magistrate, and placed it on the table. "Lady Celeste Marlowe was my mistress. I gave her private access to my house, my study, and correspondence bearing my seal. When my wife challenged the Harland agreement, I treated her knowledge as disobedience because Celeste encouraged my resentment." A shock moved through the governors. Celeste went white. Julian continued before shame could silence him. "I refused an independent examination of the school accounts. I dismissed the girl with the injured legful teacher. I transferred authority over the pupils, while knowing the evidence was disputed. Every act committed under that authority was made possible by my signature." His confession destroyed Harland's offer. It also destroyed Julian's reputation as a wronged husband and honourable magistrate. The adultery could strengthen Eleanor's claim for legal separation and separate maintenance. His own words might cost him his marriage, political influence, and control of substantial private property. He spoke them anyway. Harland signalled to the creditors. Before sunset, notices of seizure were nailed to the gates of the Eastern farms. Julian lost the land he had betrayed Eleanor to protect. Yet Celeste still appeared to win the immediate battle. Without the original evidence, the magistrate could detain neither her nor Harland on the most serious charges. The school remained closed, and Eleanor's reputation stood beneath formal investigation. That evening, Eleanor sat alone in the parish vestry with the forged authorization before her. The signature imitated her hand. The figures were correct. Even the phrase, "respectable industrial instruction," resembled language she had used in older school reports. Someone had copied more than her name. They had studied her correspondence. She placed the marked copper penny beside the paper. Its crescent cut had matched the impression in the cabinet wax. Eleanor had assumed the token was damaged accidentally and later used as a convenient tool. But Blackmere had supposedly issued the coins as wages. If all the tokens carried identical crescent cuts, the mark could identify them. If only one carried it, then the coin had been cut for a specific purpose. Mary entered quietly. "Mrs. Cole found these in the school laundry," she said. She placed 19 ordinary Blackmere pennies on the table. None had a crescent mark. The damaged coin was unique. Eleanor turned it beneath the candlelight. The cut was deep on one side and shallow on the other. It had not been made with a blade. It had been pressed beneath something narrow and heavy, the school keys. On the day Celeste received Eleanor's iron key ring, one key had carried a fresh copper stain near its teeth. Eleanor had noticed the discoloration, but dismissed it amid the humiliation. Celeste had used the stolen school key to cut the penny, then used that penny to lift and replace the donation cabinet's seal. Only the person who prepared the forgery would know which key created the mark. The burned papers were not the only evidence. The ordinary object Celeste had placed on Mary's pillow still preserved the method of the crime. Eleanor looked toward the school, where Harland had announced a public creditors' meeting for the following morning. He intended to claim the building and auction its property before parents could reorganize the charity. Every creditor, governor, parent, and tenant would be present. Eleanor folded the forged authorization. "We will let Celeste explain the coin," she said. Mary frowned. "She will deny touching it. Not if she believes denying it will prove that I am guilty." Eleanor arranged the 19 ordinary pennies in one row and placed the crescent-cut coin apart from them. By morning, Celeste would be offered 2 explanations. Whichever one she chose, she would reveal something she could not possibly know, and Eleanor intended to make her choose before the entire county. Harland opened the creditors' meeting by ordering Eleanor removed. She stood at the back of the school assembly hall with the 20 girls, their parents, the rector, Miss Reed, the dismissed footman, and the rescued Blackmere children. The same governors who had watched Julian take her keys now occupied the front row. This time, Eleanor had entered without asking her husband's permission. The county magistrate rose. "The Duchess of Wexford may remain. This meeting concerns property belonging to a charity whose accounts are under investigation." Harland's solicitor displayed the forged authorization bearing Eleanor's signature. "The matter is simple," he said. "The Duchess arranged apprenticeships at Blackmere, stole school funds to conceal the expense, and destroyed the factory when her plan was uncovered." Celeste stepped forward in Eleanor's silver badge. "She then invented accusations against me because His Grace appointed a more responsible directress. The story was polished, complete, and false." Eleanor allowed Celeste to finish. Then she placed 20 copper pennies on the long examination table. 19 were found in the school laundry after the girls returned. One was taken from Mary Finch's pillow before the apprenticeships occurred. Every coin bore the Blackmere name. Only one carried the crescent-shaped cut. Harland glanced at Celeste. It was quick, but Eleanor saw it. "The damaged token was used to lift the donation cabinet's wax seal," Eleanor continued. "The curved impression remains visible in the replacement wax witnessed by Miss Reed." Celeste gave a contemptuous laugh. "You possessed that coin. You could have damaged it yourself. That is one possible explanation." Eleanor held up a second coin, marked with a similar crescent. "Last night, I placed an ordinary penny beneath one of the school keys and struck it with a wooden mallet. The mark was easily reproduced." She offered the second coin to the magistrate. Celeste studied it from across the table. Eleanor deliberately placed the new coin beside the original, but reversed their positions. "This proves nothing," Celeste said. "It proves the mark was made by a key. Which of these 2 coins came from Mary's pillow? I cannot possibly know. Then they appear identical to you?" "Yes." Eleanor turned toward Mary. The girl carried both coins behind a folding screen, but the rector joined her as an independent witness. A moment later, she returned and placed them beneath 2 covered cups. No one in the hall could see which coin lay beneath which cup. Eleanor touched the cup on the left. "This coin bears a crescent that slopes toward the king's head." She touched the right. "This one slopes toward the date." Celeste's eyes moved to the right-hand cup. Eleanor continued, "I say the coin beneath the right cup is the one found on Mary's pillow." "You are lying," Celeste said. "The original mark slopes toward the king's head." Silence swept across the hall. Celeste realized too late what she had revealed. Eleanor lifted neither cup. "You said you could not distinguish them." "I guessed." "No. You corrected a detail no one could see." Celeste's face hardened. "Mary must have told me." Mary stepped forward. "I never saw the cut until the Duchess showed it to the magistrate." The rector lifted the left cup. Beneath it lay Eleanor's newly marked coin. Under the right cup lay the original with the crescent sloping toward the date, exactly as Celeste had denied. Her mistake did not alone prove the entire conspiracy, but it proved intimate knowledge of the altered token she claimed never to have handled. Eleanor placed the school key ring beside the coins. Copper remained embedded between the teeth of the long records room key. Its shape matched the original cut, including a small second notch the copied coin lacked. Celeste had known the mark's direction because she had made it. Harlan's solicitor rose. Even if Lady Celeste opened a cabinet, that does not connect Lord Harland to abduction or illegal labour. Then we shall examine his agreement with my husband. Julian carried a stack of contracts to the table. Each page had been inventoried and sealed by the magistrate before the meeting. He faced the assembled tenants. I authenticate my signatures, he said. I also acknowledge that I signed without requiring independent advice after my wife warned me against these terms. Eleanor opened the oldest agreement. It had been signed 6 weeks before she was accused of stealing school funds. A private schedule promised Harland 20 apprentices from the Wexford charity. Their projected wages were to be credited against Julian's debt. The pupils were selected before Celeste supposedly discovered my dishonesty, Eleanor said. The accusation did not lead to the apprenticeships. It was created to remove the person preventing them. She opened another page. If the apprentices failed to arrive, Harland could demand immediate repayment and seize the eastern farms. Whether the girls reached Blackmere or Eleanor stopped them, he profited. The tenants outside began shouting. Harland struck the table. Those schedules concern lawful employment. At a factory you declared closed. The building was reopened after repairs. Then where are the wage books, inspection certificates, and parish registrations for the children working there? They burned because you set the fire. A rescued Blackmere boy, the rescued boy, stood beside Mary. Your clerk knocked over the lamp, he said. He told the guards. The papers mattered more than us. Other children repeated the accusation. Harland's confidence weakened, but his solicitor attacked their credibility. These are frightened children, repeating stories taught by the Duchess. Eleanor did not argue. She called the dismissed footman. The former footman described delivering Celeste's violet-sealed packet to Harland House. Mary identified the clerk with the heron ring. The rector testified that the same clerk had directed riders toward the chapel. Each witness established one piece. None was asked to carry the whole case. Celeste tried to retreat toward the side door. The constables closed it. You have produced memories and a damaged penny, she said. The alleged letters no longer exist. You cannot prove I wrote them. The letters burned, Celeste said. Whatever they contained died with them. Not everything, Eleanor replied. Mary stepped forward, carrying the silver school badge Celeste had worn since the day Eleanor was expelled. She gave this to Harland's clerk before we entered Blackmere, the girl said. She told him it would prove the school had sent us willingly. Celeste's face changed. Eleanor turned the badge over. A smear of violet sealing wax remained trapped beneath its clasp. You used the badge to seal your final instructions, Eleanor said, and my husband knows exactly where you kept that wax. Every face in the hall turned toward Julian. The stationer rested one hand upon the open order book. Lady Celeste Marlowe placed the order herself. No one spoke. She requested 200 sheets bearing the Crown and Reed watermark, the woman continued. She paid for private delivery to Wexford House and asked that no invoice be sent to the school. Celeste's composure fractured. I purchased writing paper. That is hardly a crime. No, Eleanor said. The crime was what you wrote upon it. She placed the forged apprenticeship order beside the stationer's sample. Both sheets carried the same watermark. Pale blue powder remained trapped along the forged document's folded edge, connecting it to the school laundry where Harland's clerk had hidden the contracts. Daniel's testimony established delivery between Celeste and Harland House. Mary identified the clerk who copied parents' names from the admission book. The unique penny proved Celeste had opened and resealed the donation cabinet. Julian's contracts proved Harland had selected 20 pupils weeks before Eleanor was accused. Miss Reed looked at the 20 girls standing together. Why these pupils, Eleanor? Why not any others? Because their families knew what happened at Blackmere, Eleanor said. Each family had lost a child Harland erased from his records. A murmur passed through the hall. Miss Reed pointed toward the forged accounts. And the missing £900? There was no missing money. Celeste entered the transportation charge herself, so Julian would believe I had stolen it. Then the accusation came before the crime? The accusation made the crime possible. Once Julian removed me, Celeste controlled the records, the teachers, and every girl whose family could expose Harland. Mary stepped closer to Eleanor. They wanted people to believe we went willingly. Yes, Eleanor said. That was why they left coins on your pillows, locked your badges in the chest, and forged your parents' consent. Miss Reed turned toward Harland, and if Eleanor stopped the transfer, Eleanor placed Julian's agreement on the table. Harland would call in the Duke's debts and seize the eastern farms. Whether the girls disappeared or I rescued them, he believed he would win. And Celeste, Eleanor faced the woman wearing her stolen badge. She believed that once I was disgraced, she could take my school, my position, and eventually my husband's name. Either way, Celeste expected a different reward. After Eleanor was disgraced and legally separated from Julian, she intended to occupy the Duchess's social place while controlling a school financed by charitable donations. You cannot prove any agreement between us, Harland said. The magistrate looked toward the doors. 2 constables entered with Harland's clerk between them. The tracks leading from the burned dispatch case had ended at Harland's private stable. Inside, the constables found the clerk's cloak with its heron-shaped clasp, the magistrate's broken lock, and a bundle of violet sealing wax matching Celeste's letters. The clerk saw the assembled witnesses and understood that Harland had already prepared to blame him. His resistance collapsed. He admitted stealing the evidence case, setting the hay cart on fire, and taking Mary from the parish hall. He also admitted overturning the oil lamp at Blackmere under Harland's order to destroy the factory records. Harland turned upon him. You lying coward! The outburst removed the last trace of dignity from his defense. The magistrate ordered Harland, his clerk, and Celeste taken into custody. Harland faced charges for conspiracy, unlawful confinement, fraud, child endangerment, assault upon an officer of the court, and destruction of evidence. His properties were frozen pending claims from the injured workers and the families of children omitted from the Blackmere death register. His clerk received no promise of freedom, only consideration for cooperating and helping identify the remaining guards. Celeste was charged with forgery, conspiracy, attempted unlawful apprenticeship, theft of charitable authority, and participation in the destruction of evidence. As a constable removed Eleanor's silver badge from her dress, Celeste looked toward Julian. You told me she meant nothing to you. Julian did not look away from Eleanor. I behaved as though she meant nothing. That was my crime, not her failure. The constables led Celeste from the hall. The county inquiry cleared Eleanor of every financial accusation. The governors publicly recorded that the missing £900 had been a fraudulent charge created to disguise the removal of the pupils. Julian rose before the same teachers, parents, governors, and girls who had witnessed his betrayal. My wife did not fail this school, he said. I failed her. I chose ambition over investigation, pride over the girl with the injured leg, and my mistress's approval over the safety of children entrusted to my name. I dismissed loyal servants, ignored a witness, refused to search the wagon, and gave Celeste the authority that made these crimes possible. He did not ask Eleanor to forgive him. Instead, he signed away his private interest in the school buildings and endowed a permanent charitable trust using the last unencumbered portion of his personal inheritance. The trust would be governed by Eleanor, 2 elected parents, the rector, and Miss Reed. No duke could again transfer the school to a favourite with a single order. Julian also accepted Eleanor's demand for legal separation and separate maintenance. He surrendered the London house inherited through their marriage settlement for her independent use and abandoned any claim to direct her charitable income. The eastern farms were sold to satisfy Harland's legitimate creditors. Julian lost his magistrate's commission and withdrew from county politics. The title remained his, but the unquestioned authority he had valued above his wife did not. Months later, Wexford School reopened. The rescued Blackmere children entered its classrooms alongside the original pupils. Mary began training as a junior teacher. The girl with the injured leg received a properly fitted crutch and took charge of the school library. Mary's testimony helped identify 7 other factories using forged apprenticeship papers. On the first morning of the new term, Julian came to the gates alone. He carried the iron key ring he had once torn from Eleanor's waist. "I found these among Celeste's belongings," he said. Eleanor accepted them. For a moment, grief passed between them for the marriage they had once possessed and the choices that had destroyed it. "I will spend the rest of my life regretting what I did," Julian said. "That may change the man you become," Eleanor replied, "but it does not require me to return to the woman I was." He bowed and stepped back from the gate. Eleanor did not watch him leave. She entered the assembly hall, where 82 original pupils and 31 rescued children waited beneath the restored school crest. 6 years earlier, she had carried every key alone because the institution depended entirely upon her endurance. Now she removed the classroom keys from the iron ring and distributed them among Miss Reed, Mary, the elected parents, and the school porter. She kept only the key to the front gate. Then Eleanor opened it wide, allowing the morning light to fill the hall as the children stepped forward to begin their lessons.